to be kumi urai, that is, arise or shine. This is related to David Palmer's suggestion that the Cumorah means arise, O light. Very interesting here, isn't it? It's a reconstructed form of kum orah, the Hebrew kum orah. And there's some issues that these guys take with that. The idea of the etymology of Cumorah from Hebrew, they would propose. Now see, this is how scholarship works. Someone proposes a certain type of a Hebrew etymology. Someone else comes along and says, well, that's interesting, but there's a better angle here and there and so on. But listen to this etymology proposed by Cumorah, for Cumorah, by Stephen Ricks and John Twetness. It is Chemorah, which means priesthood. Isn't that fascinating? This is an abstract noun based on the word chomer, which is the word for priest. This form is based on the Hebrew noun pattern mishkal pe'ulah, with a vowel of the second consonant of the root M lengthened compensatorily from U and it goes to O. And this is technical Hebrew, I agree, because the third consonant of the root R cannot be doubled. That's the Hebrew reason why they say Cumorah is from Comer, which is priest, so it has to do with priesthood. Comer, Chemorah, may be compared in both form and meaning with the Hebrew nouns Kohen, priest, and Kehunah, the priesthood. So they propose a very valid Hebrew etymology for that name. Here's another one. Jershon, the place name Jershon. He says the name, though not found in the Bible, has an authentic Hebrew origin. The root YRS, meaning, that is Yersh, meaning to inherit, and the suffix on, this denotes place names, of course. Wilhelm Bory, in his outstanding study, The Alten Ortsnamen Palestinis, the ancient place names of Palestine, cites fully 84 ancient Canaanite place names with the ending on in biblical and extra-biblical sources. And he's using Egyptian and Mesopotamian writings, the Elamarna letters, Ostraka, and so on and so forth. And they discuss a lot of the different names with the ending on. In light of this, we should understand the words in Alma 27:22, where he says, and this land Jershon is the land which we will give unto our brethren for an inheritance. And that's the meaning of the Hebrew root, is to inherit. Jershon. That's a bullseye, folks. That's a good Hebrew name. The other one is Zarahemla. Very interesting. They say this on page 258 of the Journal of Book of Mormon Studies here. Zarahemla comes from the Hebrew Zerah and then Hemla, which has been variously translated as seed of compassion, or it can be translated child of grace, or child of pity, or compassion. It may be that Zarahemla was used for that purpose, but the Hebrew basis of Zarahemla is really powerful. So from the Hebrew basis of some of the place names and personal names in the Book of Mormon, we have again an authentic point that Mormon said we would have used Hebrew, but we couldn't. We didn't, because we changed it. But the Hebrew is reflected. And then Jeffrey R. Chadwick, Journal of Book of Mormon Studies, Volume 2, Number 2, 1993, the fall of 1993. He notes how the name Sariah, this is Lehi's wife, has been discovered in the Elephantine Papyri. Now, the Elephantine Papyri came about because the Jews from the Babylonian destruction in Lehi's day, a colony of them went down into Egypt. And the fascinating thing about the Elephantine Papyri and the Jews that went down there is they asked permission from Jerusalem to rebuild a temple there. And they were given permission to. When that temple was destroyed, they again asked permission to rebuild the temple again, and permission was also granted. Very interesting. What's one of the first things Nephi did when he got to the New World? He built a replica of Solomon's temple, only it wasn't near as big or grand like he says. But that is what Jews did back in those days. Jerusalem did not have the only temple. Well, from the Elephantine Papyri, we also have found the name Sariah. And he notes this on page 196, 197, 198, 199, and 200. He goes into a lot of the detail. I'll spare you the details. But the interesting thing is, an authentic Hebrew name has been found dating to that proper time and period, and it just happens to be the name of Lehi's wife. Very interesting, isn't it? Finally, in the Journal of Book of Mormon Studies, if you guys aren't reading this Journal of Book of Mormon Studies, you are behind the times. The interesting thing is, once again, I've said this 50 times, I'm going to say it 51 times, it's free. It's on the internet. It's on the farm's website. It doesn't cost you a dime to go get this stuff. So I would encourage you to do that. Check up on me, see if I'm bluffing you. I'm telling you, it's seriously interesting. These guys do an enormous amount of work. Volume 5, Number 1, Spring 1996. Now the question is, which one was I looking for? Oh, of course. John Gee, the LDS Egyptologist, way back here on page 162. 2 notes on Egyptian script. Now, this is so interesting because this was occurring from 1000 BC all the way up through past Lehi's day, 600 BC, on into 5 and 4 and 300 BC. By then Lehi was gone, but the Egyptian script at 600 BC was being changed and had been changed into what scholars say, because they were changing the style of certain letters and characters, they called it abnormal hieratic. They've seen the change from hieroglyphic to hieratic, and then hieratic changed to demotic, of course, and then later on that became Coptic, back down into the Christian era. But the hieratic took on an abnormal twist just in Lehi's day. And the scholars now say, well, this is abnormal hieratic. Well, okay, the Book of Mormon people call it Reformed Egyptian. We have Reformed Egyptian right in front of our faces, people. Just look at how the Egyptian hieroglyphics have changed. That's a Reformed Egyptian. And certain types of people reformed the hieratic to fit their particular needs away from the mainstream hieratic, and so they call this abnormal hieratic. So take your pick. Reformed Egyptian, abnormal hieratic. It's all the same thing. It's changed. That's the point Gee makes. He notes that abnormal hieratic, this is on page 163, he says abnormal hieratic represents the final stage of the development of cursive writing in the New Kingdom. So this is the end of the evolution of the script. But it's different than normal hieratic, which is also a change of the script. It's so fascinating how that all works out. So this idea that the Jews, the Book of Mormon Jews, and the regular Jews of Judah would not learn Egyptian because Egypt was an abomination. Yeah, that's the ideology. That's true. However, the facts, the archaeological, the historical, the linguistic, the cultural, the political, and the religious facts, all of them coalesce to show now that we have the Jews being influenced by the Egyptian culture, 600 BC. In fact, it started way back. It started earlier, and it's waxed and waned for centuries, all the way through their history as far as that goes. And it's properly reflected in the opening chapter of the Book of Mormon. So like I said, the question that was asked, it can be asked in 3 sentences. This is probably the, 1, 2, 3, I think this is either going to be part 5 or part 6 of this video series, just answering a 3-sentence question. But make no mistake about it, anybody who is out there proclaiming that there is no archaeological support for the Book of Mormon, that there is no historical reality, that there's no religious basis, there's no cultural basis or whatever, you can quote me on this. Those folks who say that, I don't even care if they have a PhD to their name. They are ignorant of the current scholarly discussions and situation, historically and archaeologically. It has powerful archaeological material showing it's extremely realistic, completely rational, and absolutely plausible. And you can take that to the bank. The Backyard Professor says anybody who argues that there's nothing in favor of the Book of Mormon is just plumb bob ignorant. That's just how it is. If you're not going to update, you're going to get smashed with the evidence. My serious suggestion is you quit pretending that the LDS scholars' research is no good, because quite frankly, it's really good right